Hi, everyone. Welcome again to Ivy English. I'm Bruce.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today we have an article for you, something a bit strange here in Taiwan, although we do have tornadoes very rarely in Taiwan.
They happen usually during typhoons. It's a 2-for-1 special.
Yeah, two different kinds of wind, strong, destructive wind. Well, we're going to take a stroll down Tornado Alley, or maybe not.
好，那 stroll 这个字呢，它是 a leisurely walk， 悠闲的散步。Take a stroll 就是悠闲的去散散步。那但在这里呢，这个它是说去哪里呢？去这个 Tornado Alley 龙卷风走廊，但是有龙卷风走廊，你这个而且不是真的一个走廊哈，所以呢，这个是开玩笑的，所以 or maybe not 还是不要好了。
Yeah.
Okay, I'll read through today's article first. When it comes to the state of Kansas, one often thinks about the 1939 cinematic classic The Wizard of Oz and the infamous tornado that swept away protagonist Dorothy and her dog Toto. However, in addition to Kansas, several neighboring states also get their fair share of tornadoes each year. This area where tornadoes commonly occur is called Tornado Alley. Tornado Alley is a large expanse of land in the middle of the U.S., extending from Texas into South Dakota. Its location has all the ingredients necessary to form tornadoes. Warm, moist wind blows north from the Gulf of Mexico. Meanwhile, cool, dry wind blows east from the Rocky Mountains. The combination of these two weather fronts changes the temperature or pressure, lifting the warm air that mixes with the cool air and forming an updraft. Then, a thunderstorm begins. Normally, the falling rain from the clouds would cool the warm air and break the storm. However, in Tornado Alley, there is another type of wind at play. The jet stream, a strong air current flowing east across the globe, combined with the cool mountain air, blows away the rain, leaving the updraft of the thunderstorm warm and wet. The winds from different directions keep the updraft rotating, forming a powerful storm called a supercell. Ultimately, the growing supercell and the spiraling updraft form a tornado that may last for as little as 3 minutes or as long as 3 hours, with winds blowing up to 300 miles per hour. If you encounter one, head to the basement of a building to prevent yourself from getting blown away and running into the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
We'll introduce her later.
Well, that's from the famous movie that Dorothy and her dog Toto are also from, The Wizard of Oz.
There you go.
So let's read the first sentence. When it comes to the state of Kansas, Kansas is one of the states in the United States, and it's in the middle. It's really in the middle in so many ways.
Yeah,
up and down middle, left, right, middle.
The Midwest.
And they actually recently proved that Kansas is flatter than a pancake. Scientists took the topography of a pancake on the top of a stack of pancakes, and they compared it to the topography of Kansas, and Kansas was flatter. Although it tilts. It tilts subtly towards the Mississippi River. Oh, no? I thought it tilted towards the Mississippi.
No, the water goes down into the Mississippi because it tilts up towards the Rockies. In western Kansas, it's starting to approach the Rockies.
So when I say tilts, I mean downward, and when you say tilt, you mean upward. So in order to be clear, we should specify that. It tilts downwards towards the Mississippi or tilts upwards towards the Rocky Mountains because the Mississippi, that whole plains area in the United States is a giant drainage area for the Mississippi River. Anyways, when it comes to the state of Kansas, one often thinks about the 1939 cinematic classic, The Wizard of Oz. A cinematic classic is a classic movie, basically. Because cinematic sounds so cool, we often put it together with classic. But it's a movie classic called The Wizard of Oz. And the reason why it's in italics or the funny slanted letters is because that's what we do for movie titles or book titles or the titles of a lot of things. We put it in italics so that the reader knows that we're looking at a title. And so we know when you hear about Kansas, you think about the Wizard of Oz and the infamous tornado. If something is infamous, it means it's famous for something bad. A famous person could be famous for good or bad things, but generally for good things. Infamous generally means they did something bad. So this infamous tornado that swept away, that blew somebody away, they blew away the protagonist. The protagonist is the main character in a film or a novel or a story. And so this tornado blew Dorothy and her dog Toto away into a fantasy world.
好，所以 when it comes to 当我们说到 the state of Kansas 就是这个坎萨斯州，谈到这个东西呢，那刚刚这个 Angela 是有提到的 Kansas 它其实非常的 flat， 它很平坦，不过呢它有一点 tilt T-I-L-T 就是有点倾斜，它靠落基山那边比较高一点，然后靠这个密西西比河那边比较低一点，这很自然。好，所以谈到 Kansas 这个州呢，One often thinks about 就是 one 就是没有特别指哪一个人，那我们中文可以讲人们，人们常常会想到什么呢？这1939年的这一个 cinematic classic 这是一个常见的一个组合因为 cinematic 听起来很有学问它其实它就是电影的意思那 classic 就是经典，所以所谓的 cinematic classic 就是一个经典电影，那就是这个绿野仙踪 The Wizard of Oz， 那注意那个美式英文念 Oz 不要念 Oz 是 Oz。然后呢 The infamous 还会想到这个恶名昭彰的 infamous， famous 是有名的著名的， infamous 是恶名昭彰的龙卷风那这个龙卷风怎么样？ That swept away 卷走了扫走了 protagonist 主角 Dorothy 还有他的狗狗Toto。
However, in addition to Kansas, several neighboring states also get their fair share of tornadoes each year. Kansas really is in the middle of the United States. If you go north, you go to Nebraska and then South Dakota. If you go south, you go to Oklahoma and Texas. And those states in particular, you can count on having tornadoes in those states every year. Where I live in New York, lived in the northeastern part of the United States, tornadoes are very, very rare. I never saw one for the 30 years I lived there. Anyway, a neighboring state means one next to you, or at least one that is not very far away.
However, 但是 in addition to 除了 Kansas 之外呢，几个 neighboring states 就是邻近的州也是怎么样 get their fair share of， 这 get their fair share of 它字面上的意思是得到所应该得到的，但其实当我们讲 get their fair share of 其实感觉通常是蛮多的，的量还蛮多的。好，那所以他们也有不少的 tornadoes each year 每一年。
This area where tornadoes commonly occur is called Tornado Alley. Why is it not called Tomato Boulevard? Why is it an alley? Alley is so
question.
like, scummy back alley, city. It's a boulevard. It's a very broad and treed and beautiful section of the world. Whatever.
I think it's Midwestern humor, as a matter of fact.
Maybe.
好，所以呢，这一个地区 where tornadoes commonly occur， commonly 就 usually ordinarily， 所以这个常常有 occur 是发生，常常有龙卷风发生的这一个区域呢，被称之为龙卷风走廊，好 tornado alley。那 alley 其实本来是个巷子的意思但这个区域其实还蛮宽的，所以刚刚 Angela 说不知道为什么他们称之为 alley， 那这个 Bruce 说说不定这是一种幽默就是其实是很大一个区域，但是他把它称之为 alley。
Okay, our next paragraph. Tornado Alley is a large expanse of land in the middle of the U.S., extending from Texas into South Dakota. Well, we've mentioned everything in this sentence already except expanse. that means a wide, large area of land.
Yeah, 所以 expanse 就是一大片的意思。好，所以他说这个龙卷风走廊呢是很大的一片 land 土地 in the middle of the US， 在美国的中间，美国中部一大片很大的土地。然后呢，一个分词告诉你 extending 延伸从 Texas 到这个南达科他州South Dakota。Its
location has all the ingredients necessary to form tornadoes. Oh, I love that. Like tornadoes are a fine dish we could serve up to you. Here are all the ingredients. But actually, it's one way to describe a problem. These are all the ingredients that could form a really good problem.
好，所以呢，这个 ingredients 这个字呢，通常我们讲食材或者它可以指成分的意思。所以在这里他说，这个龙卷风走廊的位置呢，有所有的成分或者是组成的要素等等都可以，都可以称之为 ingredients， 所需要的各种成分。necessary 就 that are necessary， 所以你需要什么要素它都有，是什么必要的要素它都有。那这个要素是要干嘛呢？目的是 to form tornadoes， 这个 to 是不定词， form 是形成， tornadoes 是龙卷风。
Warm, moist wind blows north from the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico is a body of water between Mexico and Florida, and it gets very, very warm. That is a subtropical part of the world. And because of air rising when it gets warm, it tends to push. It also pushes south, but it pushes out. In the case of the United States, the wind comes from the south, and it's moist because it's coming off the ocean.
好，所以呢 warm 温暖的 moist 湿润的风 blows north 向北吹，从哪里向北吹呢？从这个墨西哥湾 the Gulf of Mexico 往北吹。
Meanwhile, cool, dry wind blows east from the Rocky Mountains.
Meanwhile, 与此同时呢，冷的还有 dry 干的风，它是 blows east 向东边吹，从哪里向东边吹呢？从这个落基山脉向东边吹。
The combination of these two weather fronts changes the temperature or pressure, lifting the warm air that mixes with the cool air and forming an updraft. So we have two different areas of wind, north from the Gulf of Mexico that is moist, and from the west moving east is that cold Rocky Mountain air. And we call those movements, large movements of air, we call fronts, weather fronts. And when they mix, that's when the fireworks begins, and we'll talk about that in just a moment.
好，所以 the combination of these two weather fronts 就是气候的封面 front 就是封面，我们常常讲这个封面靠近就天气怎么样就是 front 这个字。所以呢，这两种气候的封面它的结合，这样的一些结合呢，会 changes 会改变 the temperature 气温，还有 pressure 气压都会改变。然后用一个分词，同时它告诉你它会 lifting the warm air， 它会抬升，把它举起来，把这个温暖的空气抬升。那这个抬升的这个温暖的空气它怎么样？ That mixes with the cool air， 它会跟这个冷的空气会混合 mixes with， 然后呢它就会 forming 就会形成一个 updraft 就是上升的气流。
Then a thunderstorm begins. Dun, dun, dun.
然后呢 a thunderstorm 就是雷雨或者雷暴，就 begins 就开始了。
Right, and that's because the warm air from the Gulf of Mexico is rising, and the cooler air, and it's dry, is heavier, and it moves under this rising area and causes that updraft. And as it rises, it also turns or spins, and that's what will create first the thunderstorm. Normally, the falling rain from the clouds, because it's a thunderstorm, that's a heavy rain. Normally, the falling rain from the clouds would cool the warm air and break the storm. Then there's no reason for warm air to be rising because cold rain will sort of kill that updraft.
Normally 就是通常呢 the falling rain 就是降下的雨 from the clouds， 所以这个云端会降下了雨，这个雨会 cool the warm air， 会让这个暖空气降温，然后呢就会 break the storm， 就是破坏这个雷雨暴。
However, in Tornado Alley, there is another type of wind at play. If something is at play, it means that it's going on in a game or going on in the circumstance. So it's also playing around in there. And that's why Tornado Alley is Tornado Alley.
但是呢，在龙卷风走廊有另外一种 type of wind， 有另外一种风呢 at play 就是发生作用或者是起作用，所以 at play 就是 active 或者是 existing as something to be considered， 就它你要考虑一下它会发生作用的。
Okay, we start with the jet stream. This is another type of wind at play that we just mentioned. And what is the jet stream? It's a strong air current flowing east across the globe. Across the globe means around the world, and it moves towards the east. That, combined with the cool mountain air from the Rocky Mountains, which is also flowing east, blows away the rain. The jet stream is a very powerful current of air. We call that a current of air, leaving the updraft of the thunderstorm warm and wet. So we don't have rain, but we still have that updraft of that warm air from the Gulf of Mexico. It's warm and wet.
好，所以呢 the jet stream 就是喷射气流，然后呢加一个同位语，它是怎么样？它是一种 strong air current， 是一种很强的气流 air current flowing east， 往东边流动 across the globe， 横越整个地球往东边流动啊，这是一个很强的一个气流。然后呢下面一个分词片语 combined with， 它跟什么结合呢？跟 the cool mountain air， 跟冷的山上的冷空气结合。那这两个东西就会怎么样？就是其实真正的主词是 the jet stream， 它 blows away， 它会吹掉这个雨，把这个雨吹掉了。那把雨吹掉呢，那就会怎么样 leaving 就是让，那 leave 某个东西，那后面再加个补语，就是让这个东西成为那个补语所说的那个状况。所以在这里让什么东西呢？那个东西就是 the updraft of the thunderstorm， 就是这个雷雨暴的上升气流啊，让这个雷雨暴的上升气流成为什么状态呢？成为这个补语告诉你 warm and wet， 成为温暖潮湿的状态。
The winds from different directions keep the updraft rotating. So this warm, wet, upward motion wind keeps turning because of this wind from the south and this wind from the mountains to the west and the wind in the jet stream. And all of these dudes together form a powerful storm called a supercell.
所以呢 the winds 风 from different directions 来自不同方向的风 keep 使什么东西保持怎么样？使这个 the updraft 使这个上升气流 rotating 保持旋转 keep something 然后后面加个 VING 就是让这个东西继续保持在 VING 那个状态。所以呢在这里 keep the updraft rotating 就是把这个让这个上升气流保持旋转的状态。那因此就会 forming 一个分词，它就形成了一个 powerful storm 一个强烈的风暴。那 called 这个强烈的风暴称为 supercell 就是超级包，那个包就是细胞的包。
Ultimately, finally, the growing supercell, it gets bigger and bigger, and the spiraling updraft form a tornado that may last, it may continue to exist for as little as 3 minutes. That's a baby tornado. Or as long as 3 hours with winds blowing up to 300 miles per hour. That is 480 kilometers per hour.
Wow, 好，所以 ultimately 就是最终 in the end 好 at last 或者 eventually 好，这样子发展到最后呢，这个 the growing 就是不断壮大的这个 supercell 超级包呢，还有那个 spiraling 就是持续旋转的这个 updraft 上升气流，这两个东西就会 form 就会形成一个 tornado 一个龙卷风。那这个龙卷风怎么样 ？That 就是指那个龙卷风 ，may 可能 last 就是持续，龙卷风持续可能怎么样 ？For 就是指持续多久呢 ？As little as 就是 少就可以少如多少多少，少如3分钟，所以少的话就只有3分钟，或者是 as long as 它也可能长达长如多少呢？3个小时。然后呢，另外它的附带状况伴随的状况就是 with winds 它有风，那 with 后面通常加个名词之后，后面常常会加一个分词来修饰这个名词，所以 with winds blowing 这个风它吹是怎么样 up to 高达300 miles per hour 就是每小时300英里啊，这非常快的风，非常强的风。
So if you encounter one, if you run into one, or if one starts running towards you, head to the basement of a building, and ideally one that doesn't have any glass windows in it, because what happens is when the tornado goes by, it actually explodes your house because of the differential in air pressure. And that's why you got to go to the basement, because flying glass is actually one of the biggest causes of death. Right? So head to the basement of a building. And also because sometimes the building just gets completely destroyed and the only thing left is the basement. So that's the other reason you go to the basement. Anyways, you do this to prevent yourself from getting blown away and running into the Wicked Witch of the West. So if your house gets picked up and you get thrown into the Wizard of Oz land, that's a bad thing too.
Yeah, 所以如果你 encounter one 就 encounter 就是 come upon 或者 meet 尤其是 unexpectedly 所以你万一遇到了 one 就是一个龙卷风 one 就是 a tornado 的意思你如果遇到了一个龙卷风的话 head to 往哪里去呢 the basement of a building 你要往一个建筑物的地下室去因为龙卷风通常把这个房子吹掉之后是把整个房子卷掉好那刚刚 Angel 老师讲他常常那个玻璃破的玻璃它这个是造成伤害很重要的原因好所以最好就躲在地下室而且地下室的门不要用玻璃最好那往地下室去 to prevent yourself from 那避免你自己会怎么样会被 getting blown away 被吹走那你如果被吹走的话他接着开个玩笑说你可能会 running into 你可能会遇到The Wicked Witch of the West 好叫西国魔女好那个也是绿野仙踪里面的一个角色
Okay, we have a few questions here for you to help you better understand today's lesson. The first one is, why is the Wizard of Oz mentioned in the passage?
本文为什么会提到绿野仙踪呢
The answer is D. It is related to tornadoes and where they happen frequently.
答案是 D 因为它跟龙卷风还有这个频频发生龙卷风的地区有关
Number 2, which phrase in this passage means having an effect?
那文中哪一个片语的意思是 having an effect?
It also means sort of doing something to something or being part of something, and the answer is at play.
对答案是 at play.
Number 3, what is the fastest speed that tornado winds can get?
龙卷风最快风速可以达到多少呢
300 miles per hour.
所以每小时300英里
And number 4, the following picture shows the map of North America. Please fill in the blanks with the storm ingredients needed to form tornadoes. So here's our ingredients for our recipe.
好，所以下图显示了北美洲的图片请你在下方的空格当中填入形成龙卷风所需要的要素
So we have A, warm, moist wind coming from the Gulf of Mexico, and B, cool, dry wind coming from the Rocky Mountains, and C, the jet stream. If you got all these, you got a tornado. Yay!
好，所以呢，这个 A 是温暖湿润的风所以 A 是从墨西哥湾往上吹的 B 呢是冷的干的风这从 Rocky Mountains往下的然后呢横的那个 C 是喷射气流
That's it for today's lesson. Hope you enjoyed it and learned something about it. We'll join you next week, or just a week from today. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.